Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to review the next episode of Agatha All Along. And this one, I think, had some interesting moments, some boring moments, some funny moments, and barely creepy moments. This one honestly just had a little bit of everything that I didn't know what to make of the episode at first. I think to say it's exciting is hard to describe it as that because there were more moments. It wasn't that funny because it had a couple moments, but the rest had other elements in it. So this just felt like a very varied episode, I guess. There's just a little bit of everything, but it was stretched enough to where it's hard to peg down one theme for this episode, really. So let's just sort of get into it. Now, I know with a thumbnail, there's probably many who may see this video and think this is just fake. This is just get people to view it. But Mephisto actually was confirmed for real this time in this episode. He does not appear, but he is directly mentioned, confirming his existence within the world of 616, the MCU Earth. And so I'll get into that in a little bit. I want to start with this episode going from beginning to end with this one. So this episode picks up where the second one left off, where all these characters are now on the road. And so the first sort of few minutes is everyone guessing and challenging and interrogating Agatha to what she's really doing because she nearly stole their powers. She's tried to get them killed and she has no care for what happens to them. And so they're sort of trying to convince Agatha that they need to work together to survive the Witch's Road. And as they all agree, they finally decide to move on with the road and find where they need to go next. And in which fashion this road, different path appears. There's this house, it's tempting, it's ominous, it's clearly a horror movie fans don't go in there kind of house, but the characters do anyway. And Mrs. Hart sort of has the comedic side of this episode because she doesn't belong there. She doesn't need to be there. She doesn't understand any of it. She's not accustomed to the witchcraft and the supernatural elements of everything going on that she's really never seen before. She obviously was in Westview and has seen what Wanda's done, but she hasn't seen the Road or the Salem 7 or anything like that. That we know of. And so she sort of provides the realistic comedic reactions that I think real people would have if they were in her place. And so she just becomes she's the funny side of this episode. And as we have our other witches, they're all sort of trying to figure out things on their own. They all want to move on. This house, as they find out, locks them inside. It's clearly a test. And so they're trying to figure out what the test is. And there's just sort of instances that happen that is sort of real convenient, but it carries a plot along. There's this wine, so they decide, sure, this is probably a trick. Let's do it anyway. Oh my gosh, they're poisoned. Now they have to find a cure. So it's just convenient plot placement, I guess, for lack of a better term, that it does carry the episode along. It just feels very lucky that they came across this and then this and then this so that everything can happen the way it did. And so it's not a problem. It's just, it doesn't feel like an original plot. It doesn't feel, I know it's, to say something in the comic book genre is realistic is really rare. This just didn't feel like it, but overall, like I said, there were some entertaining aspects to this episode, irregardless of the fact that everything was real convenient. So they drink from the wine, it's poisoned, and so now they gotta look for the cure. And when their face is puffing up, when it goes away so quickly, Jennifer is then able to determine what kind of poison it is. And so they have this list of ingredients that they need to look for, but this poison also provides them to see hallucinations. And this is where the barely horror elements sort of creep in. We get to see the characters all experience something different, except Teen. He didn't drink, so we don't see what he would have seen, but at this point, all the witches have known, or has now discovered, that his identity is being kept secret from the rest of them by a sigil, and that it prevents his identity from being known from witches. So is not just Agatha, it's the rest of them. And so the mystery continues to build with his character. I think for him to be Billy Maximoff just makes every bit of sense. But this episode did try to guide viewers into believing a new theory that I think would be interesting, but him being Billy Maximoff would just, I think, be a better choice. So throughout this episode, after they're looking for these ingredients, Jennifer sort of pulls Tina aside, warning him not to trust Agatha, confirming that she did in fact trade her firstborn for the Darkhold. And so uh, that confirms how dark of a character she is. She killed the dog, she manipulated Wanda, she tried killing people, she traded her child. We know she's not a good guy. She's just sort of that sassy, nearly comedic, comical witch character that sort of fits with the goofiness of the show, but just trying to redeem her character, I don't think that's really in the cards for the writing with her character after everything she's done. It worked at times for characters like Wanda, and after a decade, it worked for Loki in the end, but I just don't see that working for Agatha. So I hope the show doesn't try to go down this redemption path for her, because I think her being the villain just makes her character more interesting, thus providing more stories for characters with powers like hers and presumably teens and Wanda's and such. And so, as she warns Teen, she tells him that her Agatha's son could be anything. He could be a demon. He could show up at her doorstep and she wouldn't even know who he is, which I think is supposed to guide viewers into thinking Teen could be her son. And she name drops Mephisto, saying he could be an agent of Mephisto. That's the only reference we get of him in this episode, but it does confirm his existence in the MC world now. So two things for the conversation. One, Teen could be Agatha's son. Now, I can't remember the exact name because I haven't rewatched the episodes yet, but I know that there are theories that her son's name in the comics is the same name as she has for this rabbit in her home. So one theory of mine is if she did trade her kid for the Darkhold, maybe she used the Darkhold to bring him back, but he's a rabbit and it didn't really work. Because if you've watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Darkhold is supposed to give people what they really want. It's supposed to clearly spell out for them their deepest, darkest desire. And so Ada in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. created the framework and created the Agents of Hydra segment for the show. Wanda, she used the Darkhold and figured out how to go find her children to bring them back. So we don't really know what Agatha used the Darkhold for. We just know she had it, but we don't know what her primary use for it really was. It could have been to bring her son back. It just may have gone wrong. We don't know. So there is still a lot of mystery. He could be Billy Maximoff. He could be her son. We don't know. There's really nothing confirming one thing or another. So it's just a wait and see sort of thing. And so now we have that theory out there. We have Mephisto finally being name dropped for real. And now we get into the hallucinations where we see Alice finds her mom, where her mom is shouting she can't protect her. She can't protect her, and this fire comes about in the room. And so we don't really know what happened to her, which is why Alice is there on the road. So it was a tease, but it didn't really give us anything. And then Lilia, she sees this woman walking to another room, and then we see this demented head, I guess, and then another figure behind her with a skull. So I guess some Marvel theory extremist will say Ghost Rider. I don't know, but we don't really know who these characters are. Lilia doesn't say who they are. It's just she's freaked out by seeing them, and then she's pulled out of the hallucination. And so that's really it. So we get another tease, but nothing really revealing about her story. And then the same thing with Jennifer is this man. We don't know if it was her husband, a co-worker, a friend, a mentor, anything. We just see this man tries to drown her in the kitchen sink. And so he obviously, in her past, tried to kill her. But we don't know anything about him or who he is or was or if he's alive still or not. And so this episode used the hallucinations to give us a tease of each of the characters, but didn't actually really give us any new information. And so that's sort of the annoying part, is the barely giving us one little tease at a time. And that was my annoyance with WandaVision, at least in the first 4 to 5 episodes, is we got just a little bit of information, barely, just enough to make you want to watch the next episode. So it sort of felt like in WandaVision, in my opinion, those first 5 episodes sort of dragged the information and their overall plot. And I feel like that's sort of what this episode did. It dragged it along without giving us any information, but a tease just enough to make us want to know a little bit more. And so it would be nice if they just gave us something. These characters we saw in the hallucinations, maybe they could have said who they were. It doesn't have to say what they did yet, but give us something. Marvel's, I think, is trying to throw us a bone, but what they're doing is they're throwing us breadcrumbs. And it's not interesting enough to say this episode was really exciting, because like I said, they see a house, they're entering this trial, we see people in their hallucinations, but we don't get anything confirmed, and when we get to the final parts of the episode, obviously they do complete the spell, and they leave this house. So overall, there wasn't really a lot that happened, except for the tease of maybe Teen being her son, the tease of finally getting Mephisto confirmed, and the tease of their backstories, but we don't really know anything about them still yet. So in the end, we finally got something different. Teen says that Mrs. Hart is dead when they all get out of the house in this water slide thing, I guess. And so she's dead. And that's how it ends. It cuts a few seconds later, and that's the end of the episode. So I don't know if she's going to end up surviving, if someone's going to try to heal her, or what. But it sort of left us with a cliffhanger, letting people, anticipate the next one. And so if she's dead, kind of sucks, but she wasn't really all that important to the story. She was the comic relief. So if she is dead, I think the show can use that to now give us the horror elements that they've so very clearly teased with each of their marketing. And so we just haven't really seen a horror yet. The Salem 7 had a total of 3 to 4 seconds worth of creepy shots. But that's really it. There's no horror scenes. There's no horror designs. There's no horror costumes, no horror stories. So the marketing made us think that there's going to be a lot of horror elements in the show. But we're 3 episodes in, and we haven't really seen that yet. We've seen a couple of shots. So I hope that the further episodes in this season will give us more of that, especially if Mrs. Hart is dead. It raises the stakes. It keeps the characters on edge. And I don't think, if she is really dead, that there will be much comic relief in the further episodes moving forward. So we'll see what happens, guys. Like I said, Mephisto being confirmed is interesting. It's still confusing, only because throughout the multiverse we have Mephisto in Ghost Rider 2 Spirit of Vengeance. And so we know it's a different Earth. It's part of the multiverse, but if Mephisto existed there and here, then that means each world has their own Mephisto, which seems like a bit much for Marvel to do, but they're also don't want to acknowledge that Mephisto is this Mephisto. Just like there's rumors that Fantastic Four First Steps, Galactus, will retcon and decanonize the Fantastic Four Rise of Silver Surfer's Galactus. So they're getting a little confusing with their multiverse. I hope if Mephisto shows up in this next project or whenever he shows up, I hope they sort of take the chance to at least reference Mephisto from Ghost Rider. I know a lot of people didn't like the movie, and I get wanting to forget about it, but retconning and decanonizing isn't really the answer. There are some people that enjoyed it. They may not be a majority, but to scrutinize those fans, I think would be the wrong move, especially when, as Deadpool points out, the MCU is at a bit of a low point. So I think sort of decanonizing and retconning what made way for the MCU would just sort of be an insult to people who were I think it would be an insult to Marvel fans who were Marvel fans before Iron Man. So irregardless, Mephisto will probably only be referenced. I don't see him actually showing up in this. If he does, I will be genuinely surprised. But we'll see what happens, guys. The show is okay so far. This episode really didn't do it for me. Had its interesting moments, had its funny moments, but overall just felt like a runtime drag just to stretch the series to have an extra episode. So we'll see what happens. I'm still going to end up keep watching the show because I am intrigued by its concept and the hope that there are horror elements moving forward. But if you saw this, you loved the episode, tell me why. Let me know what you think. I want to hear what other people are saying about this because, like WandaVision, this show is producing so many various different theories about what's going on. So I want to hear what people are saying. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time.